The following podcast is scheduled for one fall.
It's almost time for a new chapter of GeeK KetchUp to start. But before it does, Kris and I wanted to take a moment to send our love and appreciation out to all of you for choosing to hang out with us. If you enjoy GeeK KetchUp, then make sure to slam that subscribe button and help us level up the show by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform.
You can also find us on social media to get updates on all things GK, interact directly with us, and content from the world of geekery. GeeK KetchUp Podcast on Facebook and YouTube, at GeeK KetchUp Pod on Instagram and Twitter, links to all of which can be found in the show notes below and on our website, geekketchuppodcast.com.
If you'd like to support the show, there's even links to our Square shop where you can find official GK merchandise like shirts and stickers. And Patreon if extra content is your thing. Above all, though, the absolute best thing you can do is spread the love for the world of geekery by sharing the GeeK KetchUp podcast with your friends and family.
Now get ready to enjoy today's show, and as always, remember to stay saucy.
If it's nerdy, we're into it.
Gaming, movies, television, wrestling, comics, whatever. We are Kyle Eckert and Kris Heck, two lifelong friends with a passion for the world of geekery.
And this is the GeeK KetchUp Podcast.
What's good, GeeK KetchUp family? Welcome to another wrestling recap, a series where we break down the action from the latest pay-per-view from the world of professional wrestling. I'm Kyle Eckert.
And I'm Kris Heck.
And today we're chatting about AEW All Out 2021. AEW was back in Chicago at the Now Arena for the third annual All Out pay-per-view. The event was jam-packed with 10 matches that included surprise appearances, crazy spots, and historic moments. The pay-per-view was so intense, we've decided to bring in an extra voice to help us break down the action. So making their GeeK KetchUp podcast debut, welcome Matt Wolfe, a.k.a. Fargrim Battlehammer. What's going on, Matt?
Oh, so excited to be here, guys. What a great pay-per-view that was last night. So excited to be on this podcast to talk about it. There's just so much to get into.
Yeah, man, we're excited to have you.
For sure, welcome. It's been a long time in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to have moved from the D&D group now into the podcast section of our friendship.
It's getting more serious.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah, we've taken our relationship to the next level there. As Matt has pointed out, he's part of our D&D group. He plays Fargrim Battlehammer, the dwarf, like axe-wielding, decapitating madman.
Raging barbarian.
Emmerit's least favorite friend in the group. And
I don't know if he's his least favorite. It's tough to say. Emmerit is such a strange character who judges so many people so harshly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But as I always say, there's a reason he lived in solitude for 100 years. Yeah. He doesn't like most people.
Oh, yeah.
But either way, Matt and I go a long way back before the D&D. We met back in the day at the old Frederick Keys Stadium, which is a local minor league baseball team in my hometown. It was kind of strange how we met just as camera operators back then.
Yeah, you were my technical director. You were my voice in the ears as I was running around with the camera, almost getting run over by goats for an entire season with minor league baseball.
Oh, goodness, I forgot about the goats.
That is still one of my favorite moments of working in sports, is that moment of watching three goats come running at me and just hoping that I didn't fall over. And of course, that was the moment that I did fall over.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh.
Goats are vicious.
They are. The worst part about that is I remember the crowd cheering when you fell. And all I could think was like, how horrible of like 5,000 people like actively rooting for these goats to run over Matt.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're probably on a Tosh.0 episode somewhere.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I know at one point we had talked about sending it into SportsCenter's Not Top 10 with our old boss, Brandon McGee. But yeah, I'm sure that if it ever made it onto the internet, I'd have been all over those things.
Well, we are glad you recovered and went on to have a successful career in minor league baseball. And now you live out in Portland working as a photographer. We definitely wanted to give you a moment or two to kind of shout out and plug your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work as a sports photographer mainly in Portland, Oregon, covering the Portland Thorns, the Portland Timbers, and the Portland Winterhawks. If you want to check out any of my photography, my Instagram is at Matthew Wolfe Photography, and my Twitter is at MWolfePhotos. Yeah, it's a blast. It's a fun career to have been a part of. It's every day is a little bit different. It's kind of fun, especially with hockey, having to dodge some pucks and some sticks while I'm trying to get the great photos of everything. Yeah, I love it. It's an exciting thing.
So what is more dynamic for you to dodge, goats or hockey pucks?
I feel like I had a better chance of dodging the goats than the hockey pucks because you get like 3 seconds, maybe 0.3 seconds. Like the puck is just coming by you. There's been multiple times where I don't know the puck has come by me until it hits the glass that's behind me in my little, what they call a suicide box. And then I'm like, oh, that was the puck. Oh, that was very close to just taking me out of this.
Oh, wow. Well, that explains it, because seeing your accounts, man, you get some really up close and personable in action photos, and I mean they're up there with the best of what you see in Sports Illustrated. Right, like some of the ones where you've got with the headers with the soccer, right when they're colliding and everything. I always love seeing your photos.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you get to be right on the field. You get that extra bit of danger of a ball, a puck, or whatever coming off. But yeah, it's so much fun coming out with those great photos, those moments.
There's worse jobs out there, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure. Well, nice. We're happy to have you here and along for the ride for this insane AEW pay-per-view. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump into the action. But as always, we wanted to give out that disclaimer that with all of our wrestling recaps, we're not going to go super in-depth with all of the matches. Some will get the full treatment, while others will get a little less. But we are here to talk about the pay-per-view as a whole, overall what happened, and where we think AEW is going to go coming out of it. So the first matchup was that buy-in show, and it was Orange Cassidy, Chuck Taylor, Wheeler Yuta, and the Jurassic Express taking on the Hardy Family Office, which of course included Matt Hardy, Private Party, and the Hybrid 2. Just a brief, nice, quick 20-minute spot fest to get the crowd hyped up. I think the most insane thing that happened in this whole match for me was Jungle Boy on top of Luchasaurus' shoulders. And I believe it was Isaiah Cassidy jumping off the top turnbuckle, trying to hit a crossbody, and Jungle Boy over-rotated and turned it into a flipping power slam. That one just kind of blew my mind, fellas.
Yeah, the chicken fight. Honestly, I think the biggest moment for me was the hands in the pocket step up Hurricane Rana from Orange Cassidy.
Yeah.
Man is just so entertaining to watch with his style. It's so different from anybody else out there, and I just always love seeing it.
Yeah, I really liked when they did like this 6-man, I guess submission-pede, whatever you want to call it, the human centipede situation going on. And then Luchasaurus just bowling the strike and knocking everybody over. But I really thought that it was great to see that like the entire crowd was already in the seats for this match, because sometimes, even if you have a good pre-show match, you can end up with kind of a lackluster crowd, so it just feels a little flat. This felt like it was the start of the main card right there.
For sure. And I think that goes to a lot of the people that were involved. Everybody loves OC. And Matt Hardy's always going to get a large crowd pop. So it all ended when Jungle Boy got Angelico to tap with the Snapmare. There was some post-match shenanigans with the Butcher showing back up after, I believe, a 7-month layoff. It's kind of wild that he's been gone that long, but I was happy to see him back. And then classic, the Dark Order comes down and the Butcher and the Blade come out, and it's just all sorts of chaos. But it did its job. It got the crowd hyped and prepared for the main card. And then the first match on that main card was for the TNT Championship. It was Miro, the Redeemer, God's favorite champion, taking on Eddie Kingston. And leading into this match, Eddie Kingston had said that one of Miro's biggest weaknesses was his neck, that his neck was susceptible to moves. So right out the gate with this match, we saw some insane machine gun chops right on Miro's neck. They looked brutal as hell. And then a very impressive exploder suplex. And it just kind of like set the tone that this match was going to be some heavy hitting. Miro is a big dude. Eddie Kingston is a big dude. And they were throwing their full body weight around.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a fun back and forth, too. They did such a good job of telling that story, of having those moments with Miro, having the close 2 counts, of almost getting pinned out of it. Kingston had strong moments. Miro had strong moments. They just did such a good job of building them both up. I don't even think coming out with a loss that Kingston comes out looking any worse than he did going in.
No, you can't really expect for Kingston to be hurt there because I think everybody knew that Miro was probably still going to end up winning this match. But it was good to see him get a little bit more longer form because he's just been squashing everybody. And as entertaining as that is, because Miro is pretty much gold when it comes to entertainment right now, this at least allowed more for that storytelling, more for, the full repertoire to be showed off. And I thought that Eddie Kingston, despite not really being one of my favorites, I thought that he did really well. Those machine gun chops, Miro was just bruised like I have never seen coming out of this,
Yeah, his chest looked brutal. It was just purple and red, and he had blood blisters right on his pec. It was nasty looking, and there was a lot of nasty hits throughout. I think another moment that really stuck out to me was Miro was on the outside, and Eddie went for a flying crossbody jumping off the apron. And Miro caught him and then turned it into a power slam. And once again, these are two big dudes. I mean, Miro probably weighs an easy 240, 250, solid muscle.
Right.
Eddie Kingston around the same. And they're just throwing each other around. Like I always say, big beefy dudes doing big beefy dude things. And that's exactly what this thing kind of ended up being for me.
When he put Kingston on the floor on that power slam, I visibly cringed, probably audibly cringed because you just heard that thud. And to your point, man, with how big both those guys are, that momentum running off the apron, there was no way that he didn't feel that one.
Absolutely not.
Definitely. Well, I mean, Kris, you did point out, though, that most of Miro's matches have been squash matches, a little quick. But this one did. It went the distance for a while and had a very strange finish, one could say, where earlier in the match, they were in the corner, and Miro went to pull Eddie out of the corner, and the turnbuckle got exposed. So then when we came to the finish, it looked like Eddie was going to whip Miro into the turnbuckle, and the ref stopped him, knowing that the turnbuckle was exposed. He said, no, no, no. And then, of course, the ref turns his back to fix the turnbuckle, so he's distracted. Eddie takes advantage of this and actually gets the drop on Miro and the pin. He gets a 1, 2, 3. However, the ref was distracted. The ref wasn't looking. He was doing his job, putting the turnbuckle pad back on the turnbuckle. The crowd's going ballistic because Eddie should have just won the TNT Championship. And eventually they get back up. Miro gets the low blow on Eddie, which gives him the advantage. And then he locks in the game over and gets Eddie to tap and still retains. So he gets the victory, but it's not the dominant victory that we're used to out of Miro. It is a skeezy heel victory.
Which is good. It's a good build for that character. I feel like that's the way that Miro needs to start going, is into that heel direction. And it's nice to see them actually building on a storyline, letting him have those squash matches, and now building it into this full match that he ends up getting at it with the skeezy win.
Yeah, I think it was needed almost because he's been a heel pretty much since he came to AEW, but he's just so entertaining and he's so loved by the fans that it's hard for him to get the full heel, reaction and treatment. So I think that they actually need him to do more of these things in order to keep pushing in that direction, because Eddie's a mostly fan favorite, gets a lot of love, and so you could tell that crowd was just worked last night. I mean, the way they played it with the ref, with the missed pin, I mean, that crowd was pissed. So when they hit that point where Eddie was going to use the turnbuckle, like you said, and the ref got in the middle of it, that pop was wild.
Oh, yeah. People were going ballistic because they want to see their homeboy win. And I think eventually Eddie will get a big win. He'll hold a title or two because he's too popular with the fans not to. But ultimately, I love Miro way too much to say that this is the spot I wanted Eddie to get a win.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll keep trucking along here because the next matchup was another heavyweight battle between Jon Moxley and Satoshi Kojima. This one, along the same lines, heavy hitters doing heavy hitter things. The only difference was they weren't really throwing their bodies around in this match, and it was more of a lot of chops and clotheslines. And I mean, there was several moments where they just had chop-offs.
Right.
And those always get me. always. It doesn't matter who's doing it, big guys, little guys, I don't care. I love when two wrestlers stand in the middle of the ring and just slap each other in the chest as hard as they can.
Yeah.
Well, and even at 50, Satoshi's chops were like 2, 3, 4 times the speed of Eddie Kingston's. Did you notice that?
Yeah. Yeah. They were insane. Insane, those machine gun chops. I think that was some of the fastest chops I've ever seen in my life when he had him in the corner.
Exactly.
It all came down to the end when Mox hit Kojima with 2 paradigm shifts. So that was a nice little put over that Kojima didn't just go down with 1. He needed to use 2. So he puts him down, gets the win, but that's not the end. And it's going to kind of be a theme of the night. The matches end, but then there's always a little bit of shenanigans, a little bit more going on post-match. Because once all that happened, Minoru Suzuki shows up, walks down the ring, takes off his shirt, and goes nose to nose with Mox. And I mean, I know that Suzuki is kind of an older guy too, but he looked batshit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a lot to make Jon Moxley look sane, and he almost did it last night.
The way Mox sold it when he was first coming out, like, it was the first time we've seen, like, abject terror or worry on Mox's face. And so I thought that little, like, 30-second spot between when the music hit and when Suzuki actually showed himself, and they just had that close-up on Mox's face, like, I was loving that because it was subtle, but, like, we have not seen him show that level of, oh my God, concern for any other person in AEW.
Yeah. Yeah, more moments of just like really good storytelling from AEW all around of those little pieces that they add in like that. And it really does add to making full characters for each of these guys.
Well, and he also came in, and I mean, they had a little bit of back and forth, but he pretty much worked Mox after that match. And like, granted, Kojima had just taken him to the limits a little bit, but like, we haven't really seen anybody work Mox in that way either.
Yeah, he ended up looking really strong because he got Mox in the rear naked choke and then followed that up with his wicked Gotch power driver.
Yeah.
That was insane. Those always worry me when people do pile drivers in any fashion, but especially the ones where you're kind of like totally reliant on the person delivering the move to protect you.
Yeah.
Like flashbacks of, Austin and Owens back in the day, like
every time.
Every time. It's so scary. But we're going to pick up the pace here as the pay-per-view picked up the pace a little bit because the next match on the card was the AEW Women's World Championship champion Britt Baker, DMD, going up against the alien Kris Statlander. And I say picked up the pace because the first 2 matches of the night were a little slower. They're that classic, big-time wrestling build, slow match stuff. This one, these 2 women came out of the gate hitting hard, hitting fast, and it was just kind of all throughout wildness of Statlander playing the power role, while Baker had more of the scrappy heel work, but also some nice technical moves peppered in throughout.
Yeah, it was a great match for both of them. I mean, they both had some big moments, hit some big moves. It's such a great match for Statlander, though, because Statlander hasn't always had the biggest and best matches as a singles since she's joined AEW, and this felt like that first moment of, wow, she can really hold this belt at some point and really be a great champion and hold it for a bit.
Yeah, I was surprised a little bit by the showcase of her strength. I mean, because she's definitely got some build to her. Like, you can tell that she's got some strength to her, but I don't think I had personally seen it shown off as much as we saw in here. And, there was a couple of, like, the roll-throughs where she then had to, like, pretty much squat Britt Baker up. And, even though Britt's not a huge person, she's still probably 140 pounds or something,
Yeah.
And so it's a lot, especially in the middle of a match, right? But there was just like 2, 3, 4 of those moments in this match, and I just kept coming away like, yeah, I mean, she could be billed as a powerhouse more than she is.
Oh,
for sure.
Absolutely.
I think the last time we saw Statlander like really in the ring was that championship match against Nyla Rose. And that one just didn't work very well because she had to play the lighter role because Nyla Rose is such a force.
Yeah.
And this was a much better matchup for like size and move set style for each other to go throughout.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we got to give a quick shout out though. Britt Baker's HBK inspired ring gear when she came out to the end, that jacket. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah.
Her gear is just on a whole other level as well with this championship run.
Yeah.
I think Britt Baker's on a whole other level with this championship run.
That's fair. She hasn't had a bad match since she came back from the knee injury. Really?
No, not at all. I mean, the women's division as a whole is so strong in AEW. I mean, it's going to be nice now having the extra time to actually show off some more of the lower levels of it. But yeah, Britt Baker has been amazing.
So what'd you all think about that moment where Statlander was down on the outside and, of course, Orange Cassidy was at her corner and we saw, like, more energy out of OC than we've had in 2 years? What did you all think about that?
The sunglasses finally came off and the energy came out of him. Yeah, that is a moment that it's so nice to see that out of him. I guess it's a cool little like pop out of his character.
Right.
Just to see that crazy moment. I loved it. I love Orange Cassidy as a whole though, but I love that moment for him.
Yeah, it just cracked me up because it's like he hasn't gotten that worked up for himself or the best friends or anybody else, but he really had Statlander's back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you need that in a character like his. Like if he's going to be calm, cool, collected, every now and then he needs to just kind of lose his mind and know that he's a human underneath, kind of like that he has that ability to rage and really go hardcore. So it was nice to see like in Statlander, because that's I guess it's strange pairing kind of if you're not watching week to week and seeing the development of the team aspect and this and that.
Yeah.
So it was cool to kind of see him break character, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But yeah, a few other big spots in this match for me was Baker's swinging neck breaker. She kind of did the fisherman suplex hook into a swinging neck breaker. I thought that was awesome. The fact that Statlander can actually attempt 450s at all is remarkable. Yeah, she missed one, but the fact that she goes for it is kind of insane to me. So I thought that was pretty phenomenal. They definitely had a huge superplex off the top turnbuckle that I thought was definitely of note in this match. So like all around, I actually thought this was one of the better AEW women's matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's so much to talk about with it. Like she's just so good with those big moves like that, and she continues to show that she's growing and getting better and better. And so it was nice to see her get this moment in this championship match. It's also nice to see it coming back from that knee injury, that she's able to still have the confidence to go after some of those big moves like that and not be worried about re-injuring herself.
Well, and I think for the first time since AEW started, it feels like we have a women's champion who can go out and pull the best out of the opponents. And, I liked Riho and I liked Nyla, but they were so different that it just seemed like everything was focused on them. And Hikaru, I think, can have a good match with anybody. There was nothing wrong with that, but still, it was like, once again, I just felt like all the focus was on her. Mm-hmm. And so here, these last couple matches, especially with Britt, I think that it's kind of getting more into what you want to see, where you've got this person, this wrestler at the top of the division who really is kind of pulling everybody else along in these big spots. And Kyle and I, we've talked about it in some of these recaps. The AEW's women had kind of lacked, and they weren't getting the time, and just a lot of the matches were just not quite there, especially when you can see the Charlottes and just truly like that top tier that's emerged on the other side of the coin. But I really feel, to your point, Matt, that it's changed over these last couple of months, and it is really going in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be great to see people like Thunder Rosa finally get more time to show off how great they are.
Oh, music to my ears there, Matt. I love Thunder Rosa. We'll get to that one a little later when we talk about the Battle Royale. But so both of y'all's point, I think the added layer into this is Britt Baker's ability to promo.
True.
Before a match. I think that plays such a key factor in setting the story, which makes the in-ring matchup that much more elevated and that much more hyped. Because, like, it's true, like, Rio and Sheeta and Rose were all perfectly fine in ring to some extent, but like what really lacked in a lot of their programs was that out of ring hype, the promos they would cut on each other. And credit to Britt Baker, that's what she went and worked on when she got injured out of the ring. She developed a promo, she developed a true character that she could then build everything else around, because before that she was just like a dentist. You know, she
Yeah.
might have been Ivan Yakovic or whatever his cane used to be. It was a one trick pony.
Yeah.
And now she's like a fully top to bottom character. She's got a little rage to her. She's got a ton of moves in her moveset, and she's just a top notch talker.
Yeah, exactly. And it was nice to see in this match continuing to build herself by not having to rely on Rebel and her other compatriot on the outside to help her win the match, that she was actually able to get a clean win out of this one while still being a heel.
That's a great point. And I really started to think about with her, it almost seems like she just found more confidence over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And because when she first came out and I was really just starting to realize who she was, I mean, and like to Kyle's point, when she would do promos and stuff, it just felt flat. Like it wasn't like she was like truly believing in her own character. Almost like, yeah, she was dentist first and then wrestler second. And now it's almost like she's been able to flip it to where she is wrestler first and like, oh yeah, she's a dentist. And I mean, it's just been an interesting thing to watch, but I'm really glad because we talked, Kyle, like we both kind of had her pegged as potentially the best person at the time when AEW launched, and it was just like, but she's just not giving it to us.
Yeah. She was their debut women's competitor. She was the very first women's wrestler to announce to sign with AEW, and it's nice to see her 3 years later, like coming into her own. So who knows? Maybe she worked with Tony Schiavone. Maybe she worked with the hubby and developed those skills, baby. But we'll see how all that works out. But we'll bring the match to a close here because it ended on a high spot. And I think Matt alluded to it. Baker did end up getting the win over Statlander, but in a wild series in which Baker hit a Pittsburgh Sunrise, a nice little, twist on the Panama Sunrise. Got a 2 count out of that, followed up with a quick stomp. Got another 2 count out of that, and then she went back to her old faithful and she locked in the lockjaw, which still is a brutal submission.
Yeah.
And got the tap on Statlander and the win. I think we've set that up nicely. She's building a good program and group around her. Really excited to see what's to come because I think her next match will be the inevitable winner of the Casino Battle Royale, which we will get to here in a moment. But the next thing up for the AEW pay-per-view was a backstage interview with Andre El Idolo, and he was hyping his rescheduled match against Pac that is now going to be on Dynamite because of travel concerns. Was anybody let down by this? Chris, I know you're a big Pac guy.
I was a little let down because we know that that's going to be a great match. We know Andrade is capable of great matches. We know that Pac is capable of 5-star matches all day long. So I expect that to just be a tear the house down match. But I did really think that it was kind of funny the way Chavo was playing it off and talking about like America Airlines and having no idea what happened, So it was an interesting little few moments, but really kind of overshadowed by everything else going on tonight since they weren't able to actually have a match.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, Chavo is always going to get me back to those Latino world order feelings in that moment that like lie, cheat, and steal, do whatever it takes to get ahead. So I love that moment of it. But yeah, it's just time to see this match happen.
And hopefully they will burn the house down on Dynamite. But speaking of burning the house down this night, the next one is the big steel cage matchup for the AEW Tag Team Championships. Champions, the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, going up against the Lucha Brothers, Penta Jr. and Rey Fenix. This one was just epic from start to finish.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. And I mean, to start it was entrances by both teams. And we'll go ahead and we'll start with the Lucha Bros entrance, which just rocked the house.
Yeah.
Like, Matt, did you just pop so hard for that?
Oh my God, it was amazing. I loved every moment of that. The fire, the outfits, the live performance. I mean, that's always such a great moment of those pay-per-views is bringing in that live artist to do the entrance music. And yeah, it just hit so hard. I was so excited and so ready. I mean, it gave me that feeling from the start that maybe this was finally gonna be the Lucha Bros night, and hopefully it ends up being that way. And so it was a great way to start that match.
I have to admit that I was really jealous of the fans that were in the stands at that moment in time because I've now been to 2 of the AEW, events here in Charlotte, and both times, like, despite whether they were really in big matches or not, when the Lucha Bros showed up, like, you could just tell, like, the crowds popped so hard for them, and the engagement during the matches was just always so high. And you could tell it was just like 2 or 3 notches above that when they came out with the rap and the headdresses. And I mean, I'm literally getting goosebumps right now just remembering back to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing the pops that a lot of those tag teams in AEW are getting. I mean, I felt the same way going back to the first match with Jurassic Express when they came out.
True.
I mean, that was a huge pop with that whole audience getting behind them. I mean, you could have had either one of those teams in there as that number one contender against the Young Bucks, and it would have been a great match, and it would have had that pop to it. It's just such a great time for their tag team division.
Very fair. Yep.
Oh, the best tag team division on the planet, and that's that can't be argued.
Not even close.
It's not even close. I mean, it's amazing. I'm glad you pointed out that leading into this match, it was a tag team tournament that saw the Lucha Bros winning it all to get this opportunity. But their entrance was big, but the Young Bucks doing Young Buck things came out with their own big entrance. Nick Jackson looked like a primo grade A douchebag, and it was amazing. Amazing.
I literally have in my notes, was he doing a Scott Steiner homage with that beard work? Like, it felt like Big Papa Bump.
So I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because like everybody online was going about the Hollywood Nick Jackson, and it's like, okay, yeah. But I actually wasn't even thinking Scott Steiner. I was thinking Rick Steiner. Because there were some times where Rick actually dyed his goatee blonde and black too towards the later years. And I was like, it was so weird to see, man.
Yeah.
Like it freaked me out. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Oh, and then like he goes next level because I think he added it a couple weeks ago. He's got the septum piercing.
Yeah.
And like that just is an added level of like just douchebaggery, really, in his overall look. Like that's nothing against people that have that piercing, but the way he does it with the beard and like the receding hairline, but still has long hair, like his whole aura and the Young Bucks' whole aura. And the shoes, the Jordans, everything about them, I love it. They're just
they're
dicks.
trying to be as big of douchebags as they can. It's like literally their whole gimmick right now.
Yeah.
Like even down to their social media accounts, like there's this whole thing about them changing their bios and stuff, and they're like doing it just to play to the fans. Like it's all masterful, but it's just like go fuck yourselves.
Well, we'll keep rolling here because masterful is kind of what, this tag team tornado steel cage match ended up being. And so I'd love to sit here and give everyone a play-by-play of what went down. But it's really, really difficult because I'll go ahead and say about 3 minutes into this match, it became blatantly clear that taking notes and doing play-by-play commentary was going to be impossible. Because the movement and speed at which these 4 wrestlers were moving and just doing tag moves, combo moves, jumping off the ropes, jumping up on the steel cage, flipping each other around, DDTs, the works, was just unreal. The pace that they were setting is unmatched. Like the cardio level of these 4 competitors is through the roof. It was just mind-blowing. So I kind of took it as, instead of maybe doing the play-by-play, we can highlight some really awesome spots that you just absolutely love to see. So I'm going to give the floor to Matt. What's like one of the, of all the insanity, blood, insanity, and flips that we saw in this match, what was one that totally stood out to you?
Oh, man, there are so many. I really did love, like you said earlier, I love when they get in the middle of the ring and just go chop for chop. So the chop super kick merry-go-round that they had going on there for a little bit absolutely hit for me. I was like, this is fantastic. Like, please give me more of this. I love the addition of the thumbtack Air Jordan 1, 2, and all the things that added to it. But yeah, the story. In the end, that moment of having Penta stand up for Rey Fenix, really trying to protect him, and then Rey coming out on his own with confidence at the end to end it all. It just, from beginning to end, it's so hard to pick one moment in that match that really stands above because it just was fantastic throughout the entire thing.
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, it was a great representation of tag team action. So I'm going to pass it over to Kris. Anything, Matt laid the gauntlet down there with some big ones. Anything else that stood out to you?
Yeah, I got 1 or 2 here, but to your point, I actually just stopped writing at one point and just put spots on spots on spots on spots on spots because that's all this match was. The athleticism, yeah, is off the chain, but dude, the coordination that these two guys or these two teams had is just astronomical. Like, it was wild how well they executed a match like this.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's just worth, throwing the props to them, because, a lot of matches try to get ambitious like this, and then, there's some botches or it just doesn't. I mean, these guys, it was like a whole 5-star match in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But as far as spots, there was also the 5 to 6 escalating styles of cutter that happened, where like everybody just kept outdoing each other with a different cutter.
Yeah.
The cage was probably the biggest, quote unquote, regular steel cage I've ever seen. Like, it was pretty much like Hell in a Cell without a roof.
Yeah.
So when Ray got up on the top there and did that diving crossbody, that was really impressive. But the one I really want to call out was Penta's Avalanche Canadian Destroyer on Matt Jackson. Like, not only did it look gnarly, but the speed and the torque that they flipped over, and even on the replay, like, you see Matt landed on his neck. And I don't know if you all noticed, but from that moment on, he was holding his neck like he was selling. But I kept wondering if he actually like hurt, strained, did something, because you could just see it. Like, he skipped off the mat after he landed because he hit so fast.
That might play into something later, because I did realize that in the later portions of the match, and then into some other stuff that happened later in the night, Nick took most of the bumps.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for a wrestler to take some move and then continue to sell it throughout. But in a match like this, where it's so fast paced, usually you kind of get this like mini point in time where they sell whatever just happened and then they're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like Matt, I mean, he just constantly had his hand on his neck. And so who knows, maybe it was just good in-ring wrestling. But I was a little worried there, as there was still, 5 or 10 minutes of match that happened after that.
Yeah.
Well, good in-ring wrestling, just good storytelling, because that's what makes wrestling so good, is when you legitimately, like, we all know that it's choreographed.
Yeah.
Like, no wrestling fan is walking into a wrestling show and being like, it's still real. Like, yeah. You guys know what I'm saying, but like,
It's real to me,
Yeah.
damn
it's
it.
still real to me, damn it. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
But like, there is real risk when these guys are doing these athletic moves. And so when they can blur that line and make you suspend belief, that's where like, it's like chef's kiss, mwah, like the best
Yeah.
type of storytelling and the best type of wrestling, because you're like, okay, obviously they know where the finish is going to go, but I'm confident that he really hurt himself. And now that's part of the show and part of the story, but it's not, because they're just playing with your mind.
Right.
And just these two teams, once again, telling a masterful story and a masterful match.
Yeah. You could give me this match every day of the week and I would watch it. It's so good seeing these two teams together. It's going to be sad to sort of see them move on from this and let somebody else get in on it, but I'm excited to see where Jurassic Express gets involved in this tag team world for a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would say here was, just straight up, it was one of the best cage matches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's no way around that, in my opinion. Just the level of execution, storytelling, everything was on point. 5-star match,
Yeah.
added
Yeah.
to the greatest lists of all time.
Absolutely. I mean, even down to Shivani and Callis getting pissed at each other. I mean, I had in my head, when am I getting the Shivani and Callis steel cage match to end it all?
That's a good point.
That's true. Yeah, his mic, I think Don Callis' mic cut off in the middle of it. And actually, once again, blurring the lines between what's real and what's not. Did they mean to cut his mic? Did he say something inappropriate? Or is Shivani, is that part of the story? Who knows? But I mean, we'll build to the finish here, because we mentioned it. Ray Phoenix climbed to the top of this massive steel structure and did a huge crossbody on everyone.
Yeah.
But they immediately, Penta jumped up, Phoenix jumped up, and then they hit their finisher on Nick Jackson and got the pin. And the longest reign in AEW tag team history comes to an end. And the crowd pops so loud, because the fan favorite tag team since day one of AEW's announcement are now tag team champions, and long may they reign.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, super pumped. They are so impressive. Whether singles or tag team, Ray and Penta are some of the best in the world. So it'll be really interesting to see how long they keep these titles and then what they do with their style and working with some of the newer tag teams coming up.
For sure. And speaking of those next tag teams coming up, before we move on to the next match, I think Matt said he'd like to see Jurassic Express challenge. That would be a very interesting face v face matchup. Kris, is there any tag teams on the roster right now that you would prefer to see challenge for the belts? There's a number of them out there.
I mean, I think it is a little bit hard because of the heel and face situation. So I almost want to say maybe by default FTR, just being back in, with Cash being back from that injury and everything like that. But I also think that if they could work it out, Santana and Ortiz and the Lucha Brothers could probably wrestle 5-6 just amazing matches. And I would be here for that too. So.
Yeah. Well, knowing that I've put that out there, Matt, if you want to take Jurassic Express back and put someone else in, I'd let you do that. So if there's another tag team that you want to throw out there.
Oh, man. Is there another tag team that I'd like? I really want to stick with it. I love Jurassic Express. I would be fine with it being a face-v-face match. I really think it's time to see Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy get to that level of fighting for a belt. They're just so good together, and their matches are always so entertaining. I feel like they could make it work.
No argument on me. Yeah. I love Jungle Boy. I think Jungle Boy Jack Perry is the next big thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, just to throw it in there, is that Jungle Boy is creating a situation like we saw with Daniel Bryan years ago, where like the fans are just going to absolutely demand that he gets titles and, spotlight and the whole 9 yards. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Seemingly somebody that the average fan would look at and be like, what? Who? But I mean, just the pops in the arenas are insane for Jungle Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a big rumor going around, too, that AEW is going to debut a triple tag team championship.
Oh, okay.
And I think Jurassic Express would just be earmarked for that one.
Yeah.
Especially with Marco Stunt, because we don't get to see Marco wrestle all that often, but he can wrestle.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Little Freebird division.
Little Freebird division, yeah. And there's a few teams out there. Like Death Triangle, of course, is kind of out because Lucha Bros just won the tag team championships. But there's a few other groups that have multiple members. I mean, the Dark Order comes to mind, and a few others that could, the Best Friends. When Trent gets back, Trent's currently out on injury right now, but they could certainly compete.
I think I would counter that, though, and say that as cool as that would be, and all the stables that they have now would allow for that to be successful, I think that I would rather take a women's tag team title situation in AEW before introducing another men's title, personally. But Freebird, triple tag team title set could be a little different. Could be fun.
Yeah, could be. Well, and they do have an expanded women's roster, which we're going to move into next with the Women's Casino Battle Royale. It is kind of the AEW's version of the Royal Rumble Battle Royale with a few tweaks and twists that I actually really, really enjoy. Instead of having one entrance come in at each time or all 20 starting at the same time, what they do is they group the 20 entrants into groups of 4. One group of competitors for each suit. So you've got your group of clubs, your group of diamonds, your hearts, and your spades. And each 3 minutes, a different set come in. So to kick things off in this match, we had the clubs start off the match. And that was Shida, Sky Blue, Emi Sakura, the Bunny, and Abaddon. They started out the match. And then 3 minutes later, we saw the Diamonds come in, which had Anna Jay, Kiera Hogan, Killian King, Diamante, Nyla Rose, followed up by the Hearts, which was Thunder Rosa, Penelope Ford, Riho, Jamie Hayter, and Big Swole. And then finally the Spades, which was Ty Conti, Red Velvet, Layla Hirsch, Jade Cargill, and Rebel. And then to cap it all off, there is the Joker wild card that enters after the rest of these competitors have gone in. And the big reveal, it's always a huge deal who the Joker is going to be each year. I think last time we had a Casino Battle Royale, it was Lilo Rush, which was pretty cool. Kind of coming out of retirement, having one match, and then going right back into retirement. But in this case, it was the first time that we've ever had a female Joker show up. And boy, oh boy, was it a massive, massive debut for Ruby Soho, formerly known as Ruby Riott in her WWE days. Ruby Soho came out to a huge ovation, huge smile on her face. and she made it down to the final 3. Because this match is so long, we're going to skip over a lot of the nitty-gritty here and get down to the final 3 competitors, which ended up being Nyla Rose, Ruby Soho, and Thunder Rosa. We already talked about how much I love Thunder Rosa. So seeing this final 3 was awesome because we had Nyla Rose, who's an established competitor, former champion. Thunder Rosa, who's a massive up-and-comer in the women's division, has already put on lights-out matches with Britt Baker and Kris Statlander. And now this Joker entry of Ruby Soho, really, really awesome. Matt, when the Joker dropped, what were you thinking?
Those first 3 chords of that Rancid song hit, and I just lost it. I mean, I knew it was coming. It was like the worst-kept secret that Ruby Soho was going to be the Joker. But those first 3 notes hit, and you could see it in her face. I think that's the biggest thing from that debut is like you could see it in her face coming down to the ring. Like it almost felt like she wasn't going to make it to the ring. She was so hit by the pop from the fans that she just wouldn't even get into the ring itself. But it was a great first showing from her. I thought there was a few moments of a little bit of rust when it came to that final 3 moments. There were a few moments with her and Thunder Rosa that needed to get cleaned up.
Sure.
But it also excited me for a future match between the 2 of them. I feel like they match up really well with one another. And I would have been fine with either one of them being the one that comes out of this to face Britt Baker next. It was very exciting to see that be the final 3.
For sure. Chris, Matt alluded to it. It was the worst kept secret on the internet. And that's just kind of the day and age we live in with the internets and rumors flying around. But it still doesn't take away from that excitement of the steam and the music and the enthusiasm. Were you excited for Ruby, or did you think it was going to be maybe someone else, maybe a swerve?
I was excited because I think I said a while back when she got cut from WWE that I thought that out of that group of women that she was the one that fit best in the AEW style. And with her experience, I thought at that time, especially when Britt wasn't champion and all the stuff we were just talking about, that the AEW women really needed somebody like Ruby to come in and help, maybe even be top of the division. So from that standpoint, I'm excited because I think that she elevates the division. Personally, I wasn't huge on her when she was in WWE. And I think that was probably more so just how she was used and how she kind of just kept getting kicked back down. So I don't even necessarily put that on her. But it was a good moment. Yeah, it was the best kept secret. Maybe the second best kept secret on the internet because there's some other stuff. But the only thing I would say was, to Matt's point, I agree. I thought that there was a little bit of either rust or just rough edges that happened in the match. But I had a buddy hit me up earlier today and call that out and was like, I didn't think Ruby was that good. And I said, but it's a battle royal.
Yeah.
Like almost 99% of people that go into Royal Rumbles, battle royals, whatever, don't look as good as they do when they're one-on-one. So to me, I give them a little bit of a pass there, and we'll see really what the test is down the road when she's hitting singles matches.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, the final 3 ended up being Nyla Rose, Ruby, and Thunder Rosa. There was a double team moment for Ruby and Thunder Rosa to eliminate Nyla Rose. She certainly got her stuff in. We saw a pretty vicious choke slam on Soho out of Nyla.
Yeah.
You can always count on Nyla Rose to deliver a power move or two. She's not the cleanest professional wrestler out there, but she does fit her position well in the AEW women's roster, where she's just going to come in and kick ass and be the heavy hitter. So I don't mind it, but I also didn't want to see her win. Luckily, I didn't see her win because we did see that team up find some success in eliminating Nyla Rose, and it all came down to Thunder Rosa against Ruby Soho. Y'all already alluded to it. It wasn't the cleanest back and forth right there, but it did the job. And what ended up happening is they found their way to the side apron, where after exchanging some kind of dangly moments, we didn't know who was going to get eliminated, who was going to drop, how it was going to play out. It all went down after Soho delivered an enziguri on Rosa and knocked her clean off the apron, and it gives Ruby the win. I believe she's actually the first Joker to win a casino battle royale as well.
Ah, okay. Didn't catch that one, but that's a good fact.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I'm 90% sure I'm right on that one.
Well, Lilo did.
Yeah, Lilo didn't. Yeah. Lilo certainly did not. But what that ends up setting up with Ruby is that matchup against Britt Baker. And now we have this she's a tweener, Britt Baker, because she's supposed to be a heel, but just too many people like her. So she's getting into that tough territory where they need to call the ball and either make her a true heel to make people stop cheering her, or just go ahead and make that turn.
Sure.
Versus Ruby, there's no denying it. Ruby Soho is a babyface through and through. Like, the crowd just love her. So,
Yep.
But I mean, when do you all expect that blow off match to happen? Because it's a long time until the next pay-per-view. So go to Kris first on this one. Like, do you think they give us that program right away, or do you think it's a slow build?
I think they give it right away, especially after seeing what they did with the last Casino Battle Royal. Because if we think back, Jungle Boy won that match, and within 2 weeks, he had that title fight against Kenny Omega on like a Dynamite or one of their special edition shows. So I kind of expect maybe the same thing here, even though with this situation, I think that the question mark on who would win is a little bit greater than what we saw with Jungle Boy and Kenny at that time. Mm-hmm. And so building it to Full Gear, the next pay-per-view, I think would be well within what they could do and would give them a really big payoff at the end if they went that route, more long form.
Yeah, it would be nice to go long form because you could have Ruby and Britt also building up other women in the division, having matches, continuing to have moments where they're coming back and having promos against each other, but continuing to use the longer form that they have now of having both programs to really build up the rest of this large women's division that they have, and then have that payoff at Full Gear.
For sure, because there's a lot there. I mean, I think Tay Conti is an excellent wrestler. We've already talked about Thunder Rosa. I think the Bunny is actually a lot better than what sometimes she looks. Anna Jay just came back from injury. I think she's awesome as well. There's a lot there. And one that stood out in the Battle Royale to me was Jade Cargill.
Yeah.
I had that in my notes as well. I had Jade Cargill is a beast in my notes because some of the big moves that she put on, lifting and throwing, were wild.
Yeah. And I do want to give a quick shout out because Red Velvet, even though it's not in this conversation, she kind of already had her match, and I think, we're going to go in a different direction as far as the title pictures comes to play. But man, when Red Velvet came in, all like 87 pounds of her, she hit, like flash speeds, hit the ropes, came back, and speared Jamie Hayter so hard that I took down in my notes that I think that Roman, Edge, and Goldberg all sitting at home got envious. It was the biggest spear of all time. Jamie Hayter might be dead right now somewhere just in the corner of Chicago's arena.
It's very true. It was vicious. I mean, she went out, and Red Velvet is, like a little person. And we're gonna get to it, I think, with the next match. She has Darby Allin vibes, where she can just throw her body into any situation, and it's full force. It's not just like a shoulder or an arm, or it's like, no, she throws her entire body at something, and that was exactly what we saw there in that spear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, I audibly yelled. I was like, "Oh my god!" All you saw was Jamie Hayter just fold in half.
Yeah. Well, it was a solid. I think the match through and through there, before we move on, was a great highlight of that. Everybody got their spots in. Everyone looked good. Some people got longer sequences, but it was a true highlight of a women's division that deserved to be highlighted because they have gotten better. I know in the past, Kris and I have knocked on that kind of being the Achilles heel of the AEW locker room, but not anymore. Not anymore.
No, they've continued to get deeper and deeper and deeper in that division too. I mean, top to bottom, there's a lot of talent to show off there.
Well, I will move us to the next match. I think I alluded to the Darby Allin match, but we're not quite there because up next was the Jericho must retire if he loses match. The final payoff between MJF and Chris Jericho, and just like Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks, this one started out with some pretty solid entrances. The very first one is Maxwell, Jacob Friedman's entrance on the tease of the Y2J countdown clock. That was the best swerve I think I've seen in wrestling in a long time. They threw up the Y2J countdown clock. You're like, oh man, we're going to get some nostalgia Jericho action. He's going to come out with the break the walls maybe. And then as soon as the clock ticks down, flips over. It just says Jericho's last match.
Yeah.
And then, MJF's music hit. I love it. I love MJF.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good swerve when I'm sitting at home pissed off that I didn't get the original thing because I was so upset. I heard that hit. I saw the countdown clock and I'm like, yes, 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 come on, give me that Y2J. And to get that swerve, I was so upset, which I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum from you. I am not an MJF fan. Him and his spray tan can go somewhere for a little bit.
Come on. I've converted Kris, I think. Maybe not. I don't know, Kris, have I officially converted you into an MJF fan?
You helped, and then of course, some of those better matches he had a little bit into his time with AEW put him over a lot more in my eyes. His in-ring is good, but it's not my favorite, but his heel work is second to none right now, and he is kayfabe all day long. Like, it doesn't matter if he's at McDonald's, if he's on Twitter, if he's in the ring, he just nonstop builds his heel character and works the crowd. And I even had a point here just to call it out. It was that during the entire match, it was almost like he was having this match against Jericho, but then he was also having like a verbal match against the crowd.
Yeah.
And he was like working both at the exact same time. And it's just, it's just a mastery of that art, or that part of the art of wrestling,
Absolutely. It felt like he's been doing that this entire program with Jericho. I mean, there's even that spot of him grabbing the camera and on live TV just flicking off everybody in the crowd as he's holding the camera.
Oh, it's too good. Yeah, MJF is just, if I think Jungle Boy is going to be the wrestler of the future, then MJF is going to be the heel that he works against.
Sure, yeah.
In the future. I see a lot of programs down the line between those two.
I mean, and that was actually the match, now that you remind me, that was the match that put him over for me, was that MJF Jungle Boy match from a while back that really showcased both of them off and kind of was like the real launching point for both of them, now that I'm thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Might be a good prediction there.
Yeah. But from one entrance to the next, finally Jericho gets to come out, and I'll say this one was good on paper. I don't know if the execution of this entrance was as good as they thought it was going to be. I think there was some technical glitches with the guitar, but essentially Jericho comes out with the lead guitarist of Fozzy. Someone else might have to help me on the name of...
Billy Gray.
Thank you, Kris. I was looking right at Kris for that one. I was like, I don't know the lead guitarist of Fozzy's name. So Billy Gray comes out and he plays Judas on his guitar. The crowd is attempting to sing along. It just didn't quite match up the way you wanted for that moment that, this is Jericho's last match, maybe, and this is his last entrance, and we're going to kind of do this, like it's not perfection, and it was a bit of a letdown, but on paper, it was really cool for him to come out and play Judas on a guitar live to the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt like it wanted to be that Shinsuke Nakamura style, like, entrance where everything fits together, the crowd's in it with the guitar, and it all hits for that, like, amazing viral entrance. And you're right, it just didn't quite hit that level.
Yeah, you got to give the crowd a little bit more help in those situations, especially after some, alcoholic beverages have probably been consumed in the whole 9 yards. But as I said to Kyle before we jumped on here, I think what got him was that they changed what he was playing. So it's like, instead of that dun 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 dun, like that standard riff that is really easy to follow and kind of keeps you in the timing, like, he was actually playing more lead stuff, like with the music or the lyrics, but on guitar. And I don't think the crowd was ready for that at all. And then add in, what Kyle pointed out, that it's like the sound was off and just the whole 9 yards. It sounded probably even worse at home. And so, yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown.
The only credit I'll give them, well, that's really harsh of me to say. What I will give them is, compared to the Shinsuke Nakamura entrance, at least it wasn't pre-taped. It wasn't, at least it wasn't audio. At least he was playing live and it wasn't fake.
Yeah.
So, like, you got to give him that.
Yeah.
But we'll get into the match itself here, because I actually, it was a slow build, this match. It was a long storyline getting into this, as like Jericho had to go through the trials to just earn this match. And then it finally came down to, if he loses, he's going to have to retire. So they slow built this one with a lot of like matching each other out the gate. Shoulder tackles, running the ropes. I love the double drop kick spot. I adore that. Like, it just screams Dean Malenko to me. And I loved that. So all of that out the gate was really cool. And then, throughout the match, they beat the crap out of each other. They went up into the crowd and, bashed each other into the railings and upfall literally into the crowd and then back down through. I believe there was a spot where somebody got choked with a chain. Like, that was kind of crazy. Just chaos all throughout and really just one-upmanship on both sides. Like, good in-ring storytelling between these two of anything you can do, I can do better. And Jericho, the old gunslinger, still got one fight left in him before he's put out the pasture versus, the young gun MJF. And I thought all in all, that story was told really, really well.
Yeah, I would agree. I love seeing MJF even steal a few of Jericho's finishing moves to try to finish him off. The using Floyd, hitting the Judas effect. Those moments were really done well.
Well, and we even saw MJF do a few things that we haven't seen in AEW with that big flying springboard that he did, the moonsault off the ropes into the outside of the ring. I thought that was cool. And then, he missed it, so he landed on his feet, and then he almost went pretty much right into that power bomb that Jericho gave him onto the side of the ring that actually looked and sounded pretty gnarly because of like the speed at which he spun him around. He didn't even get him square on the back. So just that whole little sequence there when they were outside of the ring, I thought was pretty awesome just because MJF, he does kind of keep more of that slower pace, that big man style that we get out of, more old school wrestling, but he's clearly capable of doing faster pace, more technical work, and even some of those big spots like the springboard moonsault.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shivani actually at one point said it's the first time they've ever seen MJF go to the top rope or do the flip over the top. Like, they've never seen him go aerial before.
In AEW.
In AEW.
I've caught some of his indie matches from back in the day before he joined AEW. Some of those matches in bars and stuff, and he does do some of that. Like, it's within his repertoire, but this specific version of MJF seemed to have been more tamed down from that standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he definitely did call that out specifically, Kyle. That's where I pulled that from.
Okay, yeah. Well, all in all, it was really good because, like I said, they dug deep into the well for both moves. Matt pointed it out. MJF was actually doing Jericho's moveset. Jericho had to do a lot of the older moves that we maybe haven't seen him do in a long time. Like 50-year-old Jericho straight up did a lion salt, and it wasn't quite like Mr. Perfect didn't totally rotate over match bad, but like he almost didn't get over, but he finally did. But the fact that he attempted it at all was impressive to me. We also saw what I thought was the best counter to a baseball slide dropkick I've ever seen in my entire life, in which MJF just pulled the side apron out and trapped Jericho inside of it.
Right.
It was so goofy. And it's just moments like that I got to give credit to these two competitors, that they can have a serious match with a serious story, tell deep stuff, and then also just make me chuckle and remember that I'm watching wrestling from time to time.
Yeah.
In the end, it was a bit of a dusty finish, as one could call it, because we saw Wardlow come down to help his buddy MJF get the win. But of course, right on cue, Jake Hagar also shows up to defend his buddy Jericho. Their outside ring distraction allows MJF to grab Floyd, as Matt said, and hit Jericho because Ref Aubrey wasn't looking. She was totally distracted with Wardlow and Hagar fighting on the outside, and who could blame her, because those two dudes are crazy. And that ends up knocking Jericho a little woozy. MJF hits the Judas effect, which is amazing. And he goes for the pin. He gets the 3, but all in the insanity and chaos, Ref Albee comes back around. She counts to 3, doesn't notice that Jericho actually gets his foot on the ropes. So the match ends. MJF is the winner. Jericho is done. He's retired. He's gone. The crowd has gone silent. They can't believe that this is how Chris Jericho's career comes to an end in AEW. But no. A secondary ref comes out, and Matt, you nailed it with the text message in our group chat at the time. They went to VAR. they went to the instant replay. They checked it out on the side, determined that Jericho's foot was on the ropes. That shouldn't be the end of the match. They need to restart it. They restart the match. we get a quick series of roll-ups and reversals and arm bars and things like that. And eventually Jericho puts in the walls of Jericho. And it was a brutal looking walls of Jericho.
Yeah.
Like it's one like the old school style where he's standing up and really cinching it back.
Yeah.
And I thought it looked fantastic. MJF couldn't handle the pain, ended up tapping, and Jericho remains an active wrestler in AEW, and MJF only takes his second singles loss in his AEW career, the only other one coming from Jon Moxley, who had to low blow him to get the win. So I'm very excited. Kris, where do you see Jericho going after this one? I know he's got some maybe personal things lined up, but do you think he leaves for a bit and then comes back, or do he goes right into a new program?
Yeah, I was about to say I see him going on tour with Fozzy. Since that's already started. But I don't know. It's hard to say, right? Because this is one of those situations. Didn't really hurt MJF here to get the loss. Jericho can do anything that Jericho wants to do. So it doesn't matter really at the end of the day. But it will be interesting to see where he sits now in AEW because he's already had that top spot with the title. He's been doing this feud with the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle and MJF for now, it seems like 18 months. And what is he going to be able to put up next that is beneficial for him and whoever he's feuding with or the company? That's, I think, a big question mark. So probably take a little bit of time off maybe or just not do as much in ring per se, and then we see him build into maybe something with Punk or one of these other big names, but I don't have a clear cut on that one, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I would say, Matt, I'm going to send it over to you, but for MJF, who would you like to see MJF go up against next?
MJF. I think we talked about it earlier. I think him and Jungle Boy, it's a perfect time to have them start going at each other. I mean, with them both at the height of their powers right now with the fan bases, popping for both of them. I think that match right now would be amazing, even if it's not. You wouldn't even need to have a belt on it for people to be excited about it. Like, that's just a great program. And I got to say, I also agree with Kris. I feel like it's also time for Jericho to almost step aside for a little bit. I mean, these trials of Jericho and having him on every single taping of everything for a little bit has, I don't want to say it's gotten me tired of Jericho because I don't think that can happen, but it's almost at that point where it's like too much of a good thing. Like, let me get a break for a little bit.
Fair enough.
I would say the last thing I would point out is just I think that they do need to figure out who truly is the best face in the company and just let MJF go deal with him, because they have kind of this like weird heel face issue right now where like nobody's truly one way or the other with the exception of just a few folks. So, maybe somebody like a Christian or whatever that is like truly a face that, he could go and have another good program with. That's the only other thing that comes to mind.
I might save my response for this question until a little later. But up next, it was the debut of CM Punk in the AEW world. After 7 years away from professional wrestling, he is back and he is taking on Darby Allin, the insane man. This has a short build. I think CM Punk debuted just under a month ago, and he instantly came in and challenged Darby Allin. So a lot of the hype is really just about Punk getting back in the ring. What did he look like? Any rust after 7 years? I mean, everyone's waited so long for this one. And even down to once the bell rang, we still had to wait a while for this one because they stared at each other for like an eternity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say the first half of this match was a little slow. It took a while to get going, but once it got going, it really kicked into gear, and these two started having a nice back and forth between Punk doing a lot of holds, chin holds, arm bars, hammer locks, that classic just, technical wrestler up against a wild man in Darby Allin. In the end, we'll kind of work towards the finish here. But after this really long build, I'm going to give it to our guest. What was your first thoughts on CM Punk back in the ring?
It's exciting for me because this was seeing CM Punk live in a wrestling ring probably for the first time for me, because that was that moment in time where I had stepped away from wrestling in college, was when he really hit his heights with WWE. Mm-hmm. So, I've seen some of his older matches. They always got me excited going back to watch them. But this was the first time like really seeing him come back, and it felt good. It felt good to see him in the ring. Everything looked good. It didn't look like there was a ton of botch moments or mistakes. So that's good to see after 7 years off of doing this, that he was able to step back in and have a clean match like this. I like the storytelling of it too, of knowing that Punk isn't going to be able to go 100 miles an hour with Darby. So I love that they went for the technical versus speed element there as well, and having Punk go for a lot of the holds, try to slow Darby's speed down as much as he can to really make it feel more realistic throughout the match. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It was great. It lived up to the hype for me.
Nice. Kris has a tendency to be a little more harsh on CM Punk, so we're going to pass it over to him and give us that hot take.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for wrestling. So I'll start there. And going back to his debut, it's good for wrestling. It was exciting to see the pop. And, I'm super pumped to be back into Cult of Personality because I love that song.
Mm-hmm.
But I am on record, as being pretty hard on CM Punk. Matt, like you said, he did most of his work, especially at his height at WWE when had kind of stopped watching wrestling for a while, the college years and all of that. I have gone back and watched a lot of his matches in the WWE Network, rewatches and things like that. And I always recognized that he was good. So I just want to kind of put this out here before I say what I'm going to say. But, the expectations were through the roof. And I think that seeing what has happened in wrestling recently, too, the expectations and the bar have been raised. So looking at it from those standpoints and trying to be a little bit more subjective or objective here with him, because I don't have that same nostalgic factor, right? Like I'm not as blindly into him as I am maybe Undertaker or some other folks. So that's the preface I'm going to put on this for all the people out here that are really, really big CM Punk fans. That said, it was a mediocre match that got the job done, in my opinion. Like, it wasn't bad spots. It told the in-ring story that they needed to for the little bit of build, and he showed that he still can wrestle. So that was all good. But the flip side, I think that with Edge coming back, who is in the same age group, actually a little bit older than Punk, and, the injury issues with Christian coming back, same age group, same amount of time out of the ring. I think both of them set the bar and performed much better in their returns, their initial singles debut matches. And so it was a little bit underwhelming for me. I expected more out of Punk given the hype, and I just thought it was a 3-star good match. You know what I mean? Nothing too crazy. Edge and Christian also look to be in a lot better shape than CM Punk, if I'm being honest. So, my jury's still out. That's where I kind of left it, right? Did enough to keep me watching. Need more.
Yeah.
And I'll leave my final decisions on him, for a later date. But this match had some good spots, and it was good for Darby, too, I thought.
Yeah.
But, I just expect more out of somebody who claims to be the best in the world still after all those years. So
that's fair.
He certainly has room to grow. One thing I noted in this match is the crowd actually started chanting, "You still got it." Yeah. But like at that point in the match, nothing had really happened. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what does he still have?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And now maybe if like that chant had come 10, 15 minutes later, like that would have been a little better for me because more had happened in the match. He had taken a few more bumps. He had done some back stretchers and backdrops. And I think at one point Darby did a flip off the top rope and he took that bump. And that was all kind of crazy. And I was like, that deserves the "you still got it."
Yeah.
But at where they started chanting that in the match, I didn't really feel like, because all he had done is like run the ropes so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think everything about his return so far, you can sum it up in the word safe.
Yeah.
I think that his promos coming back were safe and mid-tier energy. The crowd, full of energy.
Yeah.
Him, mid-tier energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that this match was very safe. It didn't put him in any spots to look remotely bad. And just for me, directly comparing it to guys in the same age bracket and similar pedigrees, like Edge and Christian put it all on the line, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And went full tilt, dives, and the whole 9 yards. Little different styles, sure, but I just think that CM Punk needs to do more to really get there for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with it. It feels a little bit at times like AEW has dealt with him with kid gloves.
Exactly.
I mean, having his debut come in Chicago, having him continue to have his first match in Chicago. Like, everything is, you're in your home base. You're going to have a fan base that no matter what is going to be behind you. So it was very much like, is CM Punk a little nervous in the background of like coming back? Is that why he's like, AEW, we got to do this here? Like, I got to have full confidence that the fans are going to be behind me no matter what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it could be. I think it's going to be the long game. It's very hard to judge CM Punk on 6 weeks in. Like,
fair, I agree.
Because it's tough to say, are they telling the story or is that's what's happening? Because he definitely had a little bit of ring rust.
Yeah. Right.
There was a little bit. Then you start to wonder, okay, well, that was something that they built in because he's a very psychological guy when it comes to wrestling.
Yeah.
So it's like, is he telling us that story or is this what's actually happening? And we're blurring the lines a little bit, and I really want to see where he goes after this. I think it was cool that he challenged Darby Allin, and his reasons why he challenged Darby Allin were really cool because he said like he resonated with Darby. He's got a punk rock vibe, and Darby Allin absolutely does, and I love all of that. But I do want to see what Punk does next because I think I'm trying to play it like everything with like a grain of salt because there's folks out there that are like, oh my God, this was match of the night.
Right.
And I think objectively, like, no, it definitely was not. Penta was bleeding like a madman.
Maybe they only turned on the match after the Lucha Bros. They're saying that because I don't know how that happened.
Did you miss the other stuff? So like, it was a decent first showing.
Right.
But I really want to see where he goes in his next series of matches, who he challenges, and what kind of pace do we see? A little more promo time, a little more of everything.
Yeah, and I totally agree. As hard as I'm going to continue to be on, and that's why I said jury's out because it is a small sample, but he has to keep ticking up.
Mm-hmm.
If he does not keep trending up from where, which I think is kind of a low bar that he set personally, then I'm gonna be disinterested completely. But trying to stay fair, give him all the room he can, maybe we're in for a wild ride.
Yeah, we will see. But in the end, he got his first victory back in the ring after 7 years. After Darby went for a Poison Rana, Punk reversed it into the go to sleep. I do still like that finisher.
Yeah.
It still just looks cool. I know he didn't invent it, and like a lot of other people have used it, but it just looks really cool. There was a nice emotional moment after the match when Sting came down to kind of like pair with Darby Allin a little bit. Darby didn't want to be picked up. He wanted to get up on his own 2 feet. They all shook hands, hugged. It was nice, all happy, but it will be very interesting to see where we go next and who he challenges next because he's there to challenge the young guys.
Yeah.
So who is his next opponent? Could it be MJF? Because I could very easily see MJF kind of turning into not like Randy Orton legend killer, but basically being like, okay, like I messed with Jericho and now I'm going to mess with Punk. Like I'm going to mess with these old dudes that I don't want to see around anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting for me to see whether this like Allen Sting Punk thing becomes a little bit of a stable because that's the feeling that I walked away with is they were even from the lead up to this of the moments of them protecting each other of like, this is going to be a great match between these two, but are we going to leave this match with them sort of feeling like that those three are going to be a stable? Because it feels like 3 generations of people that have a very similar like vibe and character.
That's a good take because at first when Sting came out, I actually was like, oh, they swerved us and the whole point of this Darby thing was because we're going to get Punk and Sting.
Yeah.
And then when they went the way they did with the handshake and stuff, it left it more like, okay, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It was just like a little moment where I was like, we might get Punk and Sting. But yeah, I mean, I could see that. Or even if they're not like an official stable, like it's almost like OC and the Best Friends where they just always have each other's backs and like show it,
Yeah.
I could see something like that. I think that's a good call out, Matt.
Nice, nice. Well, we will see where they go. Two people I think we can for sure lock that Punk will not be feuding with is our next matchup, which was Paul White going up against QT Marshall and the Factory.
Oh my God.
I think that is a lock. We will not be seeing that coming up out of AEW unless we do, and that would just be a shocker.
Yeah.
This one can be summed up very easily. It was a 3-minute bathroom break match. Paul White came down, chokeslammed the hell out of everybody. There was brutal chest slaps, which only Paul White can deliver.
It's true.
He's the only person that can do the Andre-esque just slap on the chest.
Yeah.
But it did the job. Paul White came down, just destroyed everybody, and then 3 minutes and we're back and moving on to our main event. I'll kick it over to Chris, because I know you had I saw on Twitter you had some feelings about this one.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to sum it up is what I tweeted, and that was just that Paul White came out and just destroyed all credibility that the Factory had.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that went down that way didn't surprise me, but, like, seeing some of these young guys and stuff, and then Paul comes out and, like, handles them all at 50-something years old, 3-on-1 pretty much. I was like, okay, Factory can just be dropped from AEW at this point now.
Yeah. Indeed. But we're gonna move on quickly, unless Matt, you have strong feelings on Paul White.
No, my feeling is only that I feel like Paul White can go back to the commentary table now, and like that's where we can have him stay. Like that was what he's good for with with AEW at this point. It's like just stay in the mic.
I don't mind. I don't want to sit here and talk about Paul White for a long time, but I don't mind the mini story that they told where like he is a commentator and then QT was picking on his buddy Tony Schiavone and then he stood up for Tony Schiavone. I don't mind that as long as it always ends in stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good just to say, like, hey, he had a match.
Yeah.
So when I saw this come up, that was where I was like, okay, if he can still do it, let him get, like, his one match in AEW. Awesome. You know, but other than that.
He has ring gear that still fits. All right, moving on to the main event of the evening, which is straight up, I'm going to tell you right now, it was the main event, and the main event was a really solid match between Kenny Omega, the AEW World Champion, going up against Christian Cage, who recently beat Kenny Omega a few weeks ago on AEW Rampage for the Impact World Championship. So it's kind of this dynamic of the only person to have recently beaten Kenny Omega is Christian Cage. Can he do it again when the big belt's on the line, not the Impact World Championship? And this was pretty fast and furious. It was a solid match all around. Really, really good. Both of these guys are incredible professional wrestlers through in and throughout. I think they did exactly what they did on Rampage. The match on Rampage a couple weeks ago was really good, and then the match last night was really, really good. So no one's going to knock on either one of these. Kenny Omega proving to be a solid champion and a deserving champion. And in my opinion, Christian Cage proving that he deserves to be in the main event picture and has always deserved to be in the main event picture. But I'm skipping past all the match because it was epic and it was good, and I highly recommend you go watch it. But I think we all want to get to the post-match shenanigans because that's where the money is.
Before we do, real quick, I got to give one call out to Justin Roberts because he made me laugh so hard. You know how when he introduces Kenny Omega, he always does something different and ends it with, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So did either of you catch what he said last night?
No.
When he introduced Omega? He said, after dining at the Waffle House near the airport in Charlotte, in North Carolina, Kenny Omega. And I was like, what?
Oh, God.
But they were like, what? Like, I swear that they will just randomly, he will say anything when it comes to Omega.
But there's no more perfect North Carolina call out than to call out the Waffle House either.
The Waffle House. Oh, my goodness.
Near the airport.
Too good.
Anyways,
too good.
I had to give Justin Roberts a little bit of the dapper yapper call out there.
No, it was good, and I feel a little guilty blitzing through the match, but like I said, the end shenanigans is really where this is at, so I want to make sure that we get that and that's where the time is. If I'm going to talk about one thing in the match, it's going to talk about the table spot in which the table actually gouged Christian's ribs.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't checked today, but I wouldn't be surprised if Christian has stitches. Like, it's stitches. Oh, it's stitches. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got him in his ribs.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it didn't bleed.
Yeah, that was nasty.
Yeah. Dude, it was.
Well, when Omega stomped that table on the outside, like, it cracked in like 20 pieces.
Yeah.
Like, I was actually surprised at how much that table broke, because we'll see other situations where they'll throw people on them and they like barely split. And so, I mean, it really wasn't surprising that something like that happened.
I mean, I noticed Christian having to move shards away. Like, we're about to do something here. I can't land on any of these pieces, so we got to get these out of here right now.
It's brutal. I mean, it was really, really bad. And it's one of those things where, like, yep, wrestling is choreographed, all you want to say, but that shit's real.
Yeah.
Like, you can't stop a metal folding table piece from going through your ribs. Like,
through the table and through the ribs, yeah.
Well, the other real moment, too, that happened, I don't know if you saw it, but when Christian threw Omega into the barricade, since they used those old school loose metal like bike rack barricades, he slammed it into the back of the security guard sitting there, and then hit him again, like twice. I felt bad for that guy because he took solid metal to the back.
That moment, I also loved Kenny Omega coming back from messing up the moonsault on the barricade and looking at it and doing the Urkel like, oops, did I do that? And then hitting the moonsault again.
Yeah, he was just like, whatever.
For sure. But in the end, like, we'll get to the end of the match here. Cage ended up getting Kenny up on the top turnbuckle. It looked like he was going to go for an avalanche kill switch, which would have been ballistic. I love the kill switch. I'm also a sucker for Christian Cage. But Omega ended up kind of giving him the eye poke and reversing it a little bit into a super one-winged angel, which looked crazy. That move looks insane on a regular day, let alone from the top rope.
Yeah.
So he gets it. He gets the pin. He retains his championship. And, of course, the Young Bucks come down to the ring to celebrate. Gallows and Anderson are already there. Don Callis is already there because they got involved a little bit right there at the end. And I don't know where they just decide they're going to beat up Christian Cage. You know, it's the end of a pay-per-view. The heels are standing tall. They're going to beat up on that babyface any way they can. So Jurassic Express come down to help, but the Elite have the numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
They have the numbers game, so they beat everybody down, and Omega grabs the mic and cuts a pretty fantastic promo, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if either one of you have opinions on that promo, but prior to the big reveal, that promo was spot on.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I love that, that was the build. But yeah, Kenny Omega calling it out that no one alive, dead, retired can touch him right now was fantastic. Kenny on the mic is so good. I mean, even in match, it was something that I noticed throughout the match with Christian. I love his breaking the fourth wall moments and like talking to the camera as he's about to hit something. It's so good, and it's something you don't see from a lot of people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then one thing that I was talking with another friend earlier today, we were texting back and forth, and he brought up the promo at the end, and specifically Omega's talking about, alive or dead, and how that is a specific call out to something that happened with the Elite. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it, and Adam Cole at the time. And I didn't know that specific point, but from a more overarching standpoint, I do just love how Kenny and the Elite, and really AEW in general, are totally okay with acknowledging that other companies exist and other things have happened in their careers and all of that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's just more real, but it also helps bring the fans along. Because, even as much as we watch wrestling, right, you can't keep up with everything that happens around the world. And some of these guys with 10, 20-year careers, like, there's no way you can really, truly know everything. So it's like, oh, okay, you're now adding me into these parts of wrestling history. And it's just so juicy. It's like, it just gives you so much little Easter eggs and stuff to go down a YouTube hole on and stuff like that. So I was really digging it from that.
Yeah, it feels like watching a Marvel movie now where you see those little things in the background and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where we're talking about other companies. They never acknowledge that the Forbidden Door exists.
Yeah.
Like, they're totally shielded from it. Versus AEW has kicked the Forbidden Door open.
Right.
And they're like, New Japan guys, Impact guys, let's do full-on crossovers. NWA, I think Serena Deeb defended the NWA Women's Championship on an AEW pay-per-view. Like, it's amazing to see.
It is.
Well, even just to call back, I didn't say it earlier, but Jon Moxley wearing the GCW hoodie when he came into the match with Kojima.
Yes.
And, just randomly had showed up a couple nights before and took the GCW. He's the GCW World Champion right now.
Yeah.
From Matt Cardona. And, other companies would never have allowed that. You know what I mean? So it's just, there's so many little bits and pieces to grab onto if you want to.
It's so cool because it feels like it's going back to pre-WWE era where it was those territories and just being like, hey, we're going to loan you our guy into this territory for a little bit so you can get a spot with him and he can get a little more love from that territory and bring it back our way.
Indeed.
Everybody's winning.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Yeah, everybody wins. Everybody gets, a boost out of this. Wrestling is best when everyone is firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely.
But then when Omega's dropping this promo, the lights go out, and we don't know who it's going to be. Everybody has a maybe inkling suspicion of who it could be because rumors are floating on the internet. The lights flick back on, the music hits, and he's not on loan, folks. He's all elite, baby. It is Adam Cole showing up, walking to the ring. Kenny Omega and crew have no idea what to expect. Here it is, this old friend that they thought was dead based on their YouTube show has resurrected in AEW. Just 2 weeks ago was wrestling in a massive event for another company, but yet he's here, he's wearing a shirt, he's signed up, he's walking to the ring. Is he going to be good? Is he going to be bad? We don't know, but he definitely gets in the ring. The crowd is going ballistic. Everybody gets in on the Adam Cole Bebe thing. Like, that is just... It's kind of like the DMD. Like, it doesn't matter if you like Adam Cole or you like Britt Baker. Like, you can't help but just say it. Like, you have to get involved.
It was so loud that I actually questioned if it was the loudest pop of the night.
Yeah.
Which I think is really crazy to think about how this night went. And then still, like, when he said Bebe and that place just erupted. I mean, it was just mind-blowing at that moment, all the way in midnight, still.
Yeah.
For me, it was the most surprising entrance. This was the only one that truly caught me fully off guard of oh my God, I thought this was a possibility, but I didn't expect that this was going to happen tonight.
Well, not this soon.
Yeah.
It was pretty much clear, it was coming near future. I mean, he's dating their world women's champion, but at the same time, definitely not last night. I would have thought a couple weeks down the road.
Yeah. Let them plan it or something. Yeah, because his contract just expired.
Well, but he's been month to month for over there, so I think he is already beyond the 60-day non-compete that they typically have because of his main contract being done, and he was just kind of going through. Yeah, I think it just put him in a different situation than most other talent.
Oh, yeah. So he gets in the ring. He's facing off. Nobody knows what's up. And the Elite's kind of arguing with him. He's sitting there jabbering back and forth. Jungle Boy stumbles to his feet. And then out of nowhere, super kick right to the face. Instantly debuts and instantly heel turns on the fans. Oh, my gosh. Boos raining down. Maybe mixed in with some cheers. Just kind of confusion and excitement all at the same time. How is Adam Cole going to show up and immediately align himself with the Elite? There's no way he's meant to be the savior, and yet he aligns himself with the bad guys. It just kind of blew my mind. And then I read this on the internet. This is not original thought. Somebody pointed out that he was wearing the Jordans, and that was the swerve tip off that he was going to turn on the baby faces. He had the Jordans that matched the Jackson's Jordans.
I mean, they played the swerve so well, too, with him picking up and being really? These are my best friends. Did you really think I was going to turn on them?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good, NWO moment, honestly. And the Elite kind of has those vibes here and there, but this was maybe the bigger of what we've seen since they've been formed as far as somebody new coming in and then making that call. It just took me right back to those moments with the NWO, even the Wolfpack, where it was the questions will Sting join or will so-and-so show up or who's this new guy they've got? And boom, straight into the heel group.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it very much Hollywood Hogan things where like everyone's like he's coming to save his buddy Macho Man, and then he delivers the leg drop. He hits the leg slapping super kick. Like it was too good. He jumps on the mic, goes into story time with Adam Cole, which also got a huge pop out of the crowd. Like that, there was just so much confusion, like because everyone's so excited to see Adam Cole, but then he instantly goes down this route. It was so confusing. Matt alluded to it. Yeah, Kenny Omega gets back on the mic. Like, what did you expect? He's our best friend. Of course, we're gonna bring him in. And so you think the pay-per-view's over. Like, wow, there's just been debuts out the wazoo. Like literally, if you go back to the pre-show with the Butcher coming back from an 8-month layover, to Suzuki in the middle, to Ruby Soho, like to all of these comebacks and debuts, it's like, oh my God, like I'm exhausted. There's no way this pay-per-view could deliver any more. In the middle of Kenny Omega's sign-off, Flight of the Conchords hits. And there he is, just Bryan Danielson coming out looking good. Like he looked fit, he looked trim, big smile on his face, and sure enough, Bryan Danielson is AEW All Elite, comes down to the ring, gets into a little bit of fisticuffs with the Elite, and then oh man, it was just like my arms are like pumped, and I'm getting chills right now just talking about it.
Yeah,
with an absolutely nasty remix of Flight of the Conchords too. Like I was like, where can I buy this track? I'm not gonna lie.
Dude, it was oh man, it just I didn't expect that. I didn't expect the double pop. I didn't expect the double pop at all.
Yeah, we had talked about this. Like I was like, these will get spread out. I mean, we had talked about we'd all seen that these were coming. No one expected that this was going to be one pay-per-view. We're going to go through every bullet in the chamber and we're going to bring them all out at once. Like I expected this was going to be over at least a couple pay-per-views and a couple of Dynamites, especially with Rampage starting up now, maybe a few on Rampage too.
Yeah.
So yeah, just insane. And then to see Daniel Bryan hit a vicious yes kick, that was such a great way to start it out.
Yeah, and it's interesting that like despite the back-to-backs, I'll focus more on the debuts here at the end because it wasn't like this for all of them, but you know, the back-to-back debuts, neither of them really took away from the other. And in some ways, Adam Cole showing up first added to Bryan Danielson coming in because he would have gotten a big pop. Everybody was expecting BD instead of DB now. Yeah. You know, but that surprise, I mean, they just played it so well.
It almost sets up like right out the bat. Right out the gate, you can have a Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole face off and program and just have them go up against each other and let it continue on.
Which is not something we got in the other company.
True.
Which is
how
did that slip through your fingers? But yeah, how does that not happen there? But totally the world is their oyster as far as what they can do and who they want to spin this with, because they still have Punk, who just picked up his first win. They still have Jungle Boy on the rise. They still have a guy who didn't show up at all on the night, and I kind of feel bad for him a little bit, but that's Hangman Adam Page.
Yeah.
Like Hangman Adam Page wasn't on the pay-per-view at all, and he's arguably your biggest babyface.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That'd be another guy for MJF now.
MJF, Adam Cole, there's so many options now, and it feels like that's the other side of this, is they're really building it out to have a lot of options on both the heel and the babyface side coming out of this.
And Matt, to your point, just with all of the debuts last night, I really just think they shot their shot. I think they, as a company, smelled a little bit of blood in the water and just went full tilt with all of it, you know?
Yeah.
And what's even crazy to think about is there's more coming. Like, Bray is out there, and everybody knows what's happening with that, so that'll be another massive one. And, you know, who knows, Braun is supposed to be going to Impact. And
but with
so
the forbidden door open.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like, this is as big as everything we've talked about here for last night, and I think that pay-per-view is going to go down as a top 10 or 20 list pay-per-view and a maybe potentially kind of mark in time for the current age of wrestling. There's still more to come, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most amazing part is with this Forbidden Door so blown wide open that it doesn't feel like it exists anymore. It doesn't matter that it sounds like Braun and Buddy are going to go to Impact. You could still see them show up and do great moments on AEW, and that's just so exciting to know.
Well, there's going to be a Forbidden Door that's still going to exist, and it's going to be a company of one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a problem for some of those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Very true, very true.
Well, AEW's All Out 2021 event put everything on the line after building astronomical expectations with the debut of CM Punk, multiple well-developed and high-profile matches, and rumors of more superstars all on the card. From start to finish, the entire company delivered their best pay-per-view to date, and it's hard not to feel that they achieved another level of success. Without a doubt, they raised their own bar another notch. Be sure to find us on social media to share your thoughts about All Out 2021, which match was your favorite, and what you think is coming next from pro wrestling's most exciting promotion. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this discussion, go ahead and smash the subscribe button so you never miss a chapter of GeeK KetchUp, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Also, be sure to follow GK on social media. You can find links to all of our accounts on the show notes below and on our website, GeeKKetchUpPodcast.com. There's even links to our merch store and Patreon if you'd like to support the show. But as always, remember to stay saucy, you nerds.